This is John from Global Traveler. This morning I have the pleasure of talking travel with musician Frankie Torres. How are you, Frankie?
I'm good, just starting the day. How are you?
I am good. I'm good. You're in Minnesota, correct?
Yes, I'm in Minnesota and we're really lucky. We got some snow today and yesterday, and I love the snow, so I'm happy about it.
Well, we've got a little bit. I'm in Chicago, or just outside of
Oh
Chicago. We
yeah.
got a little bit, and that's enough for me. I'm okay with it.
Yeah.
So, most recently, people have seen you on The Voice. Can you give
Yes.
us a little background? What was your path to The Voice?
I've been performing and singing my whole life. I started performing in bars and music festivals when I was 8 years old, all around the Twin Cities area. And then I've done a combination of uh, a cappella, musical theater, choir, cover bands, all that kind of stuff. And when I was going to school in Michigan, there was I had a friend of mine who we performed together, like we did gigs together, and she was on season 24 of The Voice. And when I saw her perform, I was like, I should give it a whirl, try out. So I sent in my audition. They liked me, and I did the whole process of getting to the live auditions, and I guess the rest is history.
No, you started singing at 8.
Yes.
Like, how does that come to be? Did you know immediately when you were 8 that this is what I want to do, or was it just kind of fun at the time?
I've known my whole life that singing is my biggest passion and that performing is my biggest passion. Um, I loved it, and I was always good at it. So, you like doing things you're good at. But I have always been very passionate about it. But I think I have a very specific moment when I was 14. I was performing at the Prior Lake Music Festival in Minnesota, a big festival, and we played 5 sets in between Blues Traveler, Uncle Cracker, Sugar Ray, and Smash Mouth.
Wow.
And yeah, so I got to meet all of them and I got to perform alongside them. And I was singing Pat Benatar's Heartbreaker, which is one of my favorite songs. Like, I've always loved that song when I was a kid. And there's a moment, if you don't know the song, there's a moment in the bridge where the instruments cut out and
Mhm.
it's just the vocals. And I remember standing on that stage at 14, and I could hear the whole crowd. It was like 15,000 people singing back to me, and
Wow.
it was the most euphoric like experience. And I was like, this is what I have to do. This is what I'm meant to do. This is where I feel most comfortable, most myself, and yeah, I just had to continue doing that.
Wow, that's cool. I always ask about that moment. You just gave me that moment. Like that's it's a moment when you like it all kind of comes together. That's like spine chilling. Now, since you've been performing since you were a youngster, when you were on The Voice, obviously you're comfortable on stage, you're comfortable in front of an audience, but performing on The Voice is a little different. How
Yes.
many nerves? How big were your nerves for
Oh,
that?
they were insane. I definitely blacked out. Like, you can talk to all of the contestants. A lot of them said that they blacked out for that blind audition. And we practiced. We had such a long time to rehearse our songs, rehearse our staging, and practice. But it's nothing compared to when you are standing on that stage and you see the backs of those 4 chairs and it's dead silent, and then your song starts playing and you just kind of have to go. You get one chance, and it's terrifying, honestly.
Well, you had some major musicians up there. Gwen Stefani. You had Reba. Missing some
Michael Bublé
Michael
and
Bublé. I'm missing one more. I know it, but
Bob.
oh, right, right, exactly. Thank you. How is it, performing in front of those? Because they're probably whether they're your favorite acts or ever, but they're big famous acts, so you're performing for them too. How is that?
Oh my gosh, it was so crazy, but it was so validating because I got the 4 chair turn, and it was so validating to know that all 4 of these big stars from completely different genres saw something in me or heard something in me. And I think that, like, the whole process of being on The Voice, everyone who gets to the blind auditions, like, we know that we can sing, but knowing
Sure.
that people can hear something in us, not even watching us, is super validating and a really amazing experience.
And I know it's recent, but how has the voice changed you?
Honestly, it has changed me. I feel like I there's a couple ways. I think that as a musician, I have kind of realized who I am as an artist more. I think that I grew up performing in cover bands for I've been performing in cover bands for over 15 years, and in that I have so many different musical inspirations. Like I said, I did choir and a cappella and theater, and rock is like my main. So I have so many different inspirations, but being on The Voice really it really honed in that figuring out who I am as an artist and who I can market myself as is really going to be important for my career. And knowing what kind of songs touch others, like I realized that the best song for me to sing that's going to make an impact is a song that I feel emotionally connected to. And because I think on The Voice, if you watch it, they always talk about emotion.
Right.
And vocal skill is very important, but it's really about the performance. And, do you get people dancing? Do you get people crying? All those kinds of things. And I think that's been really important for me, choosing set lists and choosing how I want to represent myself. I think that's been a really big impact from The Voice.
And I saw you sing the national anthem for the Minnesota Vikings game. Big Minnesota Vikings fan, or just kind of the thrill for doing it?
I'm a big Minnesota fan. So I do love the Vikings. They are my number one. I'm still hoping for them to get to the Super Bowl, but the Vikings Lions game was okay. It was rough. It's kind of tough being a Minnesota fan.
Well, a Chicago Bears fan, please.
It's hard, it's like I'm loyal to the team, but it's kind of tough being a Minnesota fan. But I love Minnesota, and I have always been a big Minnesota fan. I'm born and raised, and like I have a Minnesota tattoo. I'm a huge Minnesota fan, so
Okay.
I was fantastic. It was amazing to be joined in the Vikings family.
So when you're doing, okay, that's a huge stadium. I don't know what it holds,
I think
50,000,
it was like
whatever.
72,000, I think.
So how much do you have to change your performance from there to, a small arena to a mid-sized arena? How hard is that to keep changing for the arenas?
The biggest thing, and other singers, musicians who have performed in really big, echoey areas will know this. But if you see performers like in big arenas, they have what's called an in-ear in their
Mhm.
ear, and it kind of helps you maneuver around the echo of the stadium because as sound travels, it delays and everything. So the biggest part with the Viking Stadium or any other really, really big stadium that you don't have in smaller areas. Like I didn't have it in the voice area, the voice stage, is that echo, and you have to kind of ignore it because what you're singing and what you're hearing are different. So
Gotcha.
you kind of have to tune out what you're listening to, and that's what the in ear is for. It kind of helps negate the echo, but
Mhm.
it's different energy wise, obviously. um it's kind of, I think it's easier to perform to such a big crowd where you can't see individual faces, as opposed to like a small crowd where you can see every single person's reaction. You can see what's happening on their face, their eyes, if they like something. But when you're in a stadium and it just looks like thousands of like little ants, little eraser heads. You
Makes
can't,
sense.
like, you don't, if they like it or they don't like it, you can't tell. You don't know. Like there's no way to know. So you just kind of like, oh, they love it. You just tell yourself they're loving it.
Well, we are loving it. Absolutely.
Exactly.
Now, when we were communicating back and forth about the interview, you said you were doing some traveling. So where have you been lately?
So I went to Italy for Christmas actually.
For your
Uh,
brother or?
yes, so my brother he was stationed in Sicily in the Navy, and his main goal was to find a Sicilian woman and to marry her, and he did it. He found a
Okay.
woman. Yeah, so he's married now, and they're living in Bologna, Italy. And they're living, doing school, living with their two cats, and it's amazing, and he's very happy. So for Christmas, my mom and I went to Italy to visit him.
First
We
time?
Actually, it was my third time going to
Okay.
Italy. Very, very fortunate to have been able to go before. I went when I was a kid, when I was like 12, we went to Rome, Venice, and Florence. And then 2 years ago, we also visited my brother in Sicily, um, with my dad. And then, so this year we went to Milan, and then we went to Sicily, and we actually got to go to my sister-in-law's hometown, which is a tiny, tiny village in Sicily up the mountain. And it was really, really cool because it has those like European, no one speaks English, and the tiny little
Wow.
cars and the markets, and it's very, very immersed in like small town Italy.
So do you want to do a lot more traveling, whether singing or just for fun?
I love traveling for sure. Something that I've decided for myself is that whenever I travel, I'm going to make a point to sing wherever I go. So I'm going to, and I think that's a good way for me to like kind of excuse like, oh, it's work, it's a work trip, you know. So
Smart.
it's a work trip. So being on The Voice, I have so many friends from all over the country. And I visited North Carolina. I visited my friend Christina Eagle, who made it to the lives. And while we were there, we performed with her. She had two gigs that we performed with. Um, so I'm traveling and seeing these new places, but I'm also, gaining a new fan base because that's just kind of how it is. You just kind of pick up people everywhere you go.
Sure.
Um, when I was in Italy, we went on a food tour and we met a couple from Estonia. So now I have fans in Estonia, just because the people you meet.
Yeah, no, that's cool. Are there any music venues that are on your bucket list that you want to perform?
Hmm. Oh, specifically, I think just the big ones. I've actually been very, very fortunate. I've been on 6 national tours and I have performed at some really big places. I performed at Lollapalooza and I performed at Gathering of the Vibes. And I think the coolest place that I performed is I have performed at Red Rocks Amphitheater,
Oh, awesome. I
which
was going
is
to ask you about that.
yeah, it's a big bucket list item for musicians, and I was incredibly, incredibly lucky to perform there.
So what on a trip, whether well, you combine them to business and personal, which is cool. So on a trip, what are the one or two things that you must bring? Not necessarily, related to music, your work.
Okay, I'm gonna get rid of the basics like phone charger, that stuff. Obviously,
Sure.
I'll get something more interesting. I always bring my Doc Martens. I'm always a big Doc Marten girl. They're really comfortable and they go really good with outfits. Just like I love leather, so my Doc Martens. And then hmm, I always bring. I always try to bring some kind of physical notebook
Okay.
because I'm turning 25 this year and I grew up in the generation where technology was introduced. So when I was in elementary school, we didn't have all the technology we have now, but I was part of the generation that it was introduced to. So by the time I was in high school, it was all technology. But I'm very lucky to have experienced, even if it was a short amount of time, experienced, handwritten, hard copy learning. And I like it a lot. I really like being able to write down physically check off things off my checklist. And I like writing lyrics on a physical thing. And I just like having a physical notebook.
No, I think that's interesting because I think there is something to the process of physically putting it down or physically having it like that. That's an interesting answer. What's next for Frankie Torres?
Oh, for me, I'm continuing to do gigs. I am performing now. I'm the official national anthem singer for the Minnesota Frost, which is the professional, thank you, the professional women's hockey team.
Very
Uh,
familiar. Yes.
yeah, so there's only a few teams. It started up last year, but Minnesota did win the cup, so very proud of that. So I've been performing with them. I perform with my cover band. We do rock music all over the Twin Cities at different bars and stuff. And I'm working on putting out original music. I'm going to the studio actually later today, and working on a new song and just, working with all my friends all the connections that I've made through The Voice and all over the country and just kind of taking advantage of the publicity and the sense of getting having the voice on my resume is really
Mhm.
helpful.
No, that it's first of all, it led me to you, so I'm sure it's leading thousands and thousands. I see you on social media. I see the fan base growing, and I see you're active enough on it where you're keeping up with people too, which helps you. And you sound like you've got a great head on your shoulders. You got a good marketing plan, and obviously you've got the talent. There's no question about that. So before I let you go, tell everybody where they can find out more information about you. I know you've got a website. I've checked that out. So tell everybody where they can find you.
So my website is frankietorresmusic.com. Pretty simple. That's Torres with an S, not a Z. And I also have Instagram, which is Frankie Torres Music, same thing. And TikTok, as long as it's still around, I have Frankenstein 3. But all of that information is on my website. It's kind of all there. You can hear my music on my website. So frankietorresmusic.com is where you can find all the information.
Frankie, it's really been a pleasure. I followed you. I first saw you, obviously. I first saw you on The Voice. I reached out to you. You responded, and I was pleasantly surprised how quickly you responded. And I'm really, I know it was probably a real hectic time for you with The Voice and all that was going on. So I really appreciate you making time for this. I'll be following you. I encourage everyone else to follow you. And if you come to Chicago at some point, you'll probably see me in the audience.
Amazing. Thank you so much for having me.
Frankie, thank you for your time. I really appreciate it.